Hello, everybody. My name is Dorota Piotrowska, and I'm VP of People and Organization Development at HCM Tech, a company on a mission to maximize the growth potential of customer-facing employees and the impact on the business. And today, I have a great pleasure to talk to Fiona Letney, Senior Analyst at Fosway Group, about a topic that has, in a way, I would say, re-emerged in the context of hybridization. And the topic is new ways of thinking about learning and designing digital learning experiences and tech ecosystems altogether for a more equitable development world, for more equitable development opportunities. And of course, we'll explore the topic a bit more, why we picked it. But first, before we do that, let me please ask you, Fiona, to say a couple of words about Fosway Group and your mission is, what your focus has been recently, and about your own role in the company.
Thank you, Dorota, and thank you for inviting me for this conversation. Looking forward to exploring these topics. So my background, I've been in learning technology for over 20 years now, and throughout that time, I've either sold, managed, or implemented learning systems. But 7 years ago, I joined Fosway Group, and Fosway Group is an analyst organization, and we look at both HR and learning technologies, but we focus on Europe. There are lots of other analyst firms around the world involved in these areas, but we are very much focused on what Europe's doing. We have an eye on what's going on around the world, but we do focus on Europe. And so when I joined Fosway, and because of my background in learning technology and learning systems, then I took on the role of lead analyst for learning systems. And maybe just a little bit about one of the outputs that we have, which is what we're probably best known for, are the 9 grids. Now, what we mean by that, it's a 3x3 matrix. And we've actually got 5 of them all together. So 3 of them are in the HR space and 2 of them in the learning. And the one that I'm responsible for is the learning systems 9 grid. And we all have input, all the analysts have input to these, but I lead the research, if you like. And we place a lot of the learning systems on this 9 grid, benchmarking them against each other. Now, not everybody's on there, and it is just there's a certain amount of criteria. And I know that HCM DEC aren't at the moment, but we are talking with HCM DEC, and we do like what they're doing. And so, and that's why we're here. That's why we're having this conversation now, is just to kind of explore some of the areas that HCM DEC see important in their world, and comparing those with what we see as an analyst firm across Europe.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Fiona, because I know not everyone even realizes that you have more of those grids, and I really, really encourage our audience to check them out. Yes, I do it myself on a regular basis, consulting your research. So yes, very great job you're doing there. And yes, I'm really excited to be able to pick your brain today. It's the second time round. We are fortunate enough to be able to talk to one of the experts from the Fosway Group. So yeah, let us maybe explain what the topic for today's discussion is all about, why we picked it. And we can start with the questions that will all the time refer back to the research from the Fosway Group as well. All right. So very briefly, as I promised, why did we pick the topic, and what does equitable even mean in this context? Of course, we know it's not a new term. There are many dimensions of diversity, inclusion, and diversity, equality, and inclusion. And what equitable means in this context of today's conversation for us, first and foremost, we want to zoom in on the companies that have a lot of customer-facing employees, hybridization even kind of made this imperative stronger and stronger to really take good care of all the people who are dispersed, and make sure they all have very, not necessarily equal, but equitable in a sense, what they need, opportunities for development. And there are a lot of digital tools available right now, but also we need to make sure as employers to we need to make sure that they feel also, when they see this, what's in it for me, right? I'll put it this way. One of the last questions will be exactly how to sustain this need for self-development, but let's keep it for the end of the conversation. But for me, what is really important that we explore today is what we can do as an employer to make sure that people really see this, what's in it for me, and we also create all conditions necessary for them to really use both the tools that we are implementing and all the programs, formats, and everything else we'll be discussing. All right. So that's, in short, the topic for today. Would you add anything, Fiona, to this? What is your understanding?
I think it's a really good topic and very current at the moment, because what we've been seeing, and one of the things that I'll say is that 9 grid I was talking about. We have a report that you can download free of charge from the fosway.com website. And there is, at the back of that, you see the image, but at the back there is a report, and we talk about market trends and solution trends. And one of the headlines in that report is equitable access and inclusion are key to the hybrid workplace. And so talking about it is that, it's something that we have raised in that report. And I think that the two things maybe to talk about is, let's start at the end with the hybrid. So sometimes we can talk about hybrid as being, particularly through the pandemic, it was those that were remote, working from home perhaps, or in the office. And so that's one term that has been used for hybrid, and we do reference that in that part of the report. But also the other side of it is, as you've said, Dorota, is that it's about those that are maybe deskless workers, so the frontline workers, and those that are at a desk. And I think there is that the potential for in the past for it not to have been equitable in terms of what they have been able to access in terms of the learning content, because they're not at a computer. And so, digital learning and online learning does need some means that it isn't in a classroom anymore. It is about accessing it. And up until now, and this was another, I'm going to mention another couple of areas from the report that kind of speak into this, and we'll probably come back to these as well. So yeah, we talked about frontline workers being in the spotlight post-pandemic, and I think that's because during the pandemic there was the need for getting information to those frontline workers that weren't at a computer, and so it was likely to be via a mobile phone. And although mobile phones, and again looking at the solution trends that we talk about, mobile phones have been around for so long. They've been something that a lot of learning and development professionals have been looking for in a learning system to make sure that there is the opportunity to use the mobile phone, but it hasn't necessarily then, they've not necessarily been able to implement it, because within the company there might have been some IT policies that need to be straightened out before they could go onto the mobile. So it's only now post-pandemic that is beginning to raise its head. And so the equitable piece is about making sure that regardless of whether you're at a desk or on the front line, you have access to all the knowledge, all the data, all the learning that you need to do your job well. So a long answer to the question, but yeah, so I think it's a great topic.
Great. It's exactly what I was hoping for you to give us more of a context for that. And taking it from there, I would love to maybe open with a very general question that I think kind of leads, is connected nicely to what you just said. What do you think, or what does your research show as regards an evolution of thinking about equitable digital learning opportunities in terms of like maybe overarching trends, but also L&D priorities or maybe challenges that you observe? Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that we've asked recently is, so how has your approach had to change to kind of so that the hybrid workers all have this equitable experience? And we found that 48% of the respondees said they had to make a significant change. And in fact, there were only 9% that they didn't have to change at all. So I think there has been this evolution over the recent years to make sure that technology has been used and been accessible by everybody. So I think that's one of the areas, is that yes, there's been a change, that people have had to start to think differently.